Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
All right, it's a We Just Watched. So I say, hi everybody. You say hello.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is David Bell. Now you say your name, because I said my name is David Bell.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Epperson.
And we just watched... Oh!
What happened to her, Mom?
I don't know.
What happened to her?
Body has decomposed.
How quickly can that happen?
7 years.
But she just died.
Wait, where are the kids?
Trent!
Kara!
Come here!
Hey, have you seen my children?
Mom? I'm right here.
Okay. So we were just... All right. First, hold on. All right, we gotta do things in order.
Yeah,
Abe, thank you so much for being on.
Hey, man.
That's number one.
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate
you.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to the show. All right. Talk about old. All right. So what we were saying before we started was that this movie is like a weird meme now.
Yeah.
Everybody's tweeting about it. Everybody's into old.
Everyone's making jokes about old. I have never seen I don't feel like I've seen a movie quite like this, surrounding it. Like, I'm not even talking about watching the movie. Just like everyone recognizes that the title of the movie being called Old is fucking hilarious.
I think it goes back to everybody I know has a story of seeing the words from the mind of M. Night Shyamalan in a trailer.
Yeah.
And the audience laughing or groaning. I've heard that story.
Right.
And so I think M. Night has become like someone that we all universally are like, meh. Like we all kind of love making fun of him. Mm-hmm. And it makes him, I think people go and see his movies, right? At this point for that reason.
Maybe.
Like, I feel like there's a producer out there who's just like, what dipshit idea do you have, M. Night? Oh, that's great. Sounds great. Let's make it. He takes gigantic swings.
It's got to be more base than that. It's just got to be like, well, the numbers are up. He does all right. I mean, it started as number one, which it was
this
weird.
Movie will do well.
Did you see that? M. Night Shyamalan tweeted that that he was like, he put all of his movies and the years, and it said all the ones that were started at number one in the box office. It was like the braggiest, like.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like, yeah.
Well, because that's what he has. Because he has two things that I will always give him credit for. One is, he gets people into the theater, maybe not for good reasons. And and the second thing is related. He actually does original things.
This was
based off a comic.
Yeah.
Yeah. He takes weird swings, and I kind of appreciate him doing that.
Yeah.
Like, his movies are unique. And he there's no denying that. I also think he's a good director in terms of the scenes.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
How did you like Old?
It was terrible. It was not a good movie.
It was not a good movie.
It was not a good movie. And you know what really bothered me was the script.
Yeah. That's most M. Night Shyamalan movies.
Yeah. The direction didn't bother me. And when there's an opportunity, I want to talk about why, because it was very loud, very in your face, very Shyamalan. In that, like, there's a lot of camera moves that are unmotivated. We actually have in Small Beans has a director piece theater that's coming out today that is about that.
Oh,
and I
okay.
couldn't help but focus on. But the script, something dawned on me like halfway through, and it's is that his characters, or the characters in his films, don't speak like humans.
No, he loves clever children.
Yeah,
And
well,
just,
it's charming
gonna-
when Trent starts as a kid, and yeah, absolutely.
Charming, I don't know. The moment they're in the car and the little girl loses the song and he goes, her spontaneity has been stripped from her.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, fuck you.
Oh, well,
like,
yeah.
this is, okay, so it's going to be this kind of irritating.
Yeah, settle down, Wes Anderson. You know?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I'm going to warn people, I guess, that we're going to spoil this movie, but I also want to know. Yeah, obviously we're going to spoil it. All right. You were talking about the camera work.
Yeah.
And it definitely feels like a lot of it is him going, I have a cool idea.
Yeah.
But I think the motivation, from what I could tell, I don't know if this is R-rated, but the motivation felt like he was trying to...
It is not.
It's not R-rated. Okay, because it felt like he was trying to cover up some of the more disturbing moments.
Yeah, that's what
There's
I
a part...
was assuming.
Yeah, there's a part where a girl falls to her death, and he, like, cuts to the ocean, and I was like, I don't know what that means. But it feels like it was just to cut away, and not have the sound of flesh hitting the ground, you know?
Yeah, it's done several times. The stabbings are done that way. Like almost
getting
every...
the tumor out, like
tumor.
focusing on the sky.
Yep. It's because blood in at the MPA
Right,
is not
and there's
very,
not much...
Yeah.
They do tumor surgery, and there's no blood. And, of course, the baby sequence.
And the baby, but that's usually just true, you know? Yeah, it's PG-13, so this all makes sense, and that's endemic of a different situation in Hollywood, where there's no rated R films unless they're marketed as rated R, because obviously they just make less money. So everything bumps itself to PG-13. We've seen this in all the remakes. You know.
Do you think that's why he made those choices? To be like, look,
Yes.
I can't show this stuff, so I'll at least not show it in an interesting way.
So there's something I don't want to get too much into the weeds, because you guys don't talk about like direction and stuff. But there's a
people love weed.
The curious case of M. Night Shyamalan. Is what I call this, which is, I'm not referencing Benjamin Button, but I am, because I mean, it's old. But here's the thing.
Oh!
Sorry.
Sorry.
Called
Go
old.
on.
It's called old. The interesting thing about M. Night Shyamalan to me is that he actually is very, very good at direction. He is meticulous in the ways that I think is that are important, that don't confuse things. And when he's confusing, he does so intentionally in a way that, like, usually retroactively, if you just think about it for a minute, it definitely scans as an intentional, like, oh, that is thematically involved. Or the dramatic argument of the movie, this, you know. And in this one, what I love about, there's a dissociative kind of aspect of watching this film. Anyone who watches this film, I'm sure, will have more than one moment where you're watching the movie and you're like, things are happening way too fast, or like the dialogue is just not connecting. People are saying things and then someone's saying something else, and they have no like tissue that connects it.
It's very manic.
It's very manic. The shots cut from geography that doesn't make sense to sudden geography that, like, you retroactively go, oh, that was like a scene cut. And so all these things are, like, actually, to me, after seeing the movie, kind of sound when you think about what the movie's about. It's about trying to track a lifetime all at once. And that's the dilemma. And it would be very disassociating and very manic to someone who is experiencing that. He's doing this kind of Lumo narrative with the camera and with the movie based on the dramatic suggestion of the concept of the movie. That's cool. It doesn't make you relate to the movie or enjoy the movie or get connected to the characters at all. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It's a bad strategy if you want to get to connect to the people in the movie, which is hilarious because then he has scenes that are just like, I loved you. This beach is where I wanted to be my whole life. And it's just like, I don't give a shit about any of these people.
I think that's what it is I think the style is okay if the writing was better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of the disassociation I have, a lot of the parts where I felt disjointed was because I was like, why are they doing this?
Right.
Like,
because
little things like that.
You did, because you hadn't like seen the whole movie. It's something that Adam brought up in the episode that came out today. It's really because everyone's talking about Old, and he talks about Unbreakable, and he did it there too. So even the second movie that M. Night Shyamalan does, he does this a lot. He does a concept that is actually like intellectually interesting, and then and you don't really see it the whole time. So how good and useful is it really? If it doesn't work in the duration of watching the movie, in fact, it does the opposite of those things because you're confused.
I think what it is
that's not good direction.
Yeah, I think what it is like when you watch a Jordan Peele movie, right? Mm-hmm. In the writing and the execution, there's a like top level where you can just enjoy it like a horror movie.
Yeah.
And then you can think about it a little longer. And this is a theme with a lot of horror movies. And you go, oh, it was about that. Or, oh, when you think about it this way. M. Night, his films always feel like they have a meaning, but he sacrifices that surface level story.
Yeah.
Like when you watch Signs and you think, oh, the aliens represent demons and the little girl it's holy water and so on and so forth. You can like break it down and be like, oh, that's a smart idea. The problem is that the way things unfold, he doesn't figure out a surface level reason for them to unfold that way. No, so it just feels dumb unless you pick up on that.
Right. Because you don't because it's putting the cart before the horse in the movie Signs, using the theme that you're alluding to. The reason I think that doesn't work for us is because we don't realize that they're going to be demons until the final stroke of the story. So when you're telling the story, it's like something I do all the time. I preface my argument before I say my argument. That's just a speech pattern thing, a thing I do all the time, that I find is frankly a problem, but it's how my brain works, right? But that's particularly not good storytelling because it's like setting you up for something before the expectation or the understanding of where I'm going to go is primed and in the mind of the listener. So he's making you think like it's interesting when you think about it like this, but I'm never going to be along with you if you are always one step ahead of me. And
it's almost like, oh, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to land it home to me, what that means though, is because he needs to be one step ahead of us because we have beaten him down. Poor Shyamalan. I'm sorry. This is this is the curious case. Like we have just beaten him down over like 2 decades saying, oh, what's your twist, motherfucker? Yeah, we called that one. You're fucking useless. That he probably racked his brain so much and said like, what I guess they want is to be, for me to always be one step ahead.
Right. It is the unfortunate, like when you follow his career, after The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable felt like a film that never was supposed to have a twist. And then it felt like some producer was like, but what's the twist? And it was like, it felt like it was cut in a way so that it's like, the reveal that he's, they called me Mr. Glass.
Yeah, and I'm
like,
the
that's
arch
not
villain.
like that's not supposed to be like a big mind-blowing twist. It's just a development in the script. But everybody was like, that wasn't a great twist.
It's not a twist.
It's just a reveal. And I think he got plagued by that for a while.
Right. I think
so. And meanwhile, he still makes movies that I like. I liked Split. I liked that one with the fucking with the parents or grandparents.
Right.
It's because he's a good director. His instinct should be to make something simpler or to make something more surreal. Because I think that's part of the problem. Like, I don't care what this movie means. I assume it has something to do with the fact that, life moves at you fast. And life is, before you know it, you're old. And so on and so forth. It's just the surface level stuff is so stupid. For example, he focuses on... So, if people haven't watched this, we should probably explain what happens in it, right?
Right.
Which is that a family goes to a resort. The resort is like, hey, you should know about this like cool beach that nobody knows about. We'll take you there. They're clearly evil. Like, the resort people feel sinister. Mm-hmm. They even show that, like, the little kid who's like the son of the guy running this resort is clearly concerned. Him and the little boy have a friendship. Mm-hmm. They write codes for each other. He likes breaking codes. And then they go to this beach and they get really old. And then, it's a group of people all dealing with this. All their diseases, that's the thing, accelerate.
Do you, I did a little old math. Do you want to hear it? This seems like I have time. So I restructured different ways of saying how fast the beach is relative to normal time.
Yes.
Because they gave it to us a few times and then they had a few more like broader strokes that actually kind of mathematically work out. And some that don't.
And we're going to get
into but I just want to, so everyone knows, very clear, if you haven't seen Old and are going to want to watch Old for some reason with spoilers, it's kind of funny. So they say at one point that 30 minutes is a year. And they also say at one point that one day is more or less they say 2 days.
One day is about 50 years.
Yeah, is about 50 years. And that's 24 hours, so that's like 48 years. So it all kind of works out if you take the 30 minutes to 1 year. And I wanted to get shorter with the time because that's where like the math, like you can't do the math as easy because we're switching to days, months, hours, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So every 5 minutes, it means that 2 months pass or 60 days. Every minute, it's 12 days. 1 second is 4.8, let's just call it 5 hours. 1 second is 5 hours. And there's some smaller moments that things happen in literally seconds that are pretty hilarious. And it really breaks down the format.
The pregnancy happens in like 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense. They constantly break their own rules. They also say, because they have to, one of them goes, why hasn't our fingernails grown and hair grown? And someone else says, because it's dead cells.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, dead people are decomposing extremely fast.
Extremely fast.
It's like,
there's like meat and food everywhere that is not spoiling. Like, it's very selective.
They're in like weird bags, so that's why I thought. God, when she eats that pasta with her bare hands, I don't know why they did that. There's a certain element here where they also have to explain why they don't have child's minds, and they say it. She says, like, I have new colors in my brain.
Yeah, I think that's like...
And weird shit like that. But, all right. So they start aging fast. Every time they try to leave, they black out and, like, come back.
And how do they get physically back to the shore? That's always what that bothers me.
They just sort of float. It's very convenient. A lot of the time when like they find that guy's body, he just like she just goes for a dip.
But they literally walk into like the cave, like the
I think
entryway.
Someone says at one point you backed out.
Oh,
like
did they?
You backed out of the cage and you fell over. So I think that's what's happening.
So
is they're like
weird.
Walking. So they start trying to explain it, right? Also, everybody keeps saying what they do for a living. Did you notice that? I don't know why that happened because it never actually.
It starts
just
with
for
Trent,
exposition,
who's
I think.
the small boy who turns into old boy.
Right.
They
go around the beach and they ask, "What do you do for a living?"
Yeah.
and it's like an exposition machine because it's
Yeah.
someone like, why I'm a cop, why I'm a doctor. Later, after they meet mid-sized Sudan, which is a character,
It's a rapper. Yeah.
a rapper, who is weirdly cryptic and won't explain anything.
Yeah, that's bad. It's really bad.
There's a few of those. The knife maniac, the doctor has a mental disorder.
Yeah.
And that is rapidly like grows in time, and he stabs mid-sized Sudan to death.
Mm-hmm.
And then he cuts him first.
No, well, he cuts him at one
And then they don't
point.
take away his knife.
Yeah.
They don't detain him, and then he stabs him to death
And
later.
then they take away the knife.
Yes, but they don't detain him, and he becomes a real problem.
Yeah, I don't know why he goes after him. I mean, I know that like he's the one to not trust because he was the one there before, and like and there's a dead body as soon as they get there on like within an hour a body washes ashore, and they're like, "Oh, you were with her and now she's dead?
Yeah.
You must be," which is natural. It's like Lord of the Flies up in here, but he really gunning for him like the whole time.
Right.
I thought they were doing
I
like
think he's
Alzheimer's.
racist.
I think he's
the idea is
racist.
He's kind of he says like he's going to steal from me. He's losing his mind.
He's
and he focused on him. But again, they don't detain him. And then later, just jumping ahead, he attacks the husband. And the funniest thing happened, as far as I'm concerned, is the husband and wife are now old. He's attacking them with a knife. The wife runs away to the kids who are in like, I don't know, they're like 30. They're able-bodied.
Yeah.
And she says, "Go run and hide."
As soon as they're like 17, 18, that like stopped being a deal for me. Because like everyone's like, that's why I thought they were more like kid-like, I think, than you did. Because they are they're shocked all the time. They can't
They're
deal
shocked
with
all the
stuff.
time, yeah.
You know, and as the adults can deal with it a little easier, but it unravels pretty quickly over the span of the movie. People have different, it's kind of like Annihilation, if you've seen that film, where
it's definitely like their brains and hormones are growing,
they
but
just
like
give
their
up.
experiences are still of a child.
I think there's something interesting in this concept that I'm sure that Sandcastle, which is the graphic novel, probably does a lot more of, given the format it's in and the fact that it's probably longer or whatnot.
Also, at the end, they go, "Let's make a sandcastle before we escape." So I assume the title Sandcastle really mattered in the graphic novel.
Well, Sandcastle's great.
Was significant.
Sandcastle's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
It's great. It
I
has
just assume
everything you need.
That's something like it was more character based.
That's crazy to me. Sandcastle's a perfect one.
I think because there was just a lot more emotional stuff in the graphic novel of these kids, growing up, but not.
Right.
I assume that was the bigger part of the movie or the story. And then since it got like, turned into M. Night Shyamalan, he was just like old. But okay. Going back to people saying what they what they do. The wife says to the doctor at one point, she walks up and says, because she's trying to convince him that mid-sized Sudan didn't kill this lady or something. I forget what she's trying to do. And she says, "I curate exhibits for a museum. I'm telling you this so you'll trust me," is a line. Mm-hmm. And again, it's all just exposition. Like, that's a nonsense line. It's just so we can learn what she does for a living. Because later she ages bones. Yeah. And that's how they find out.
Yeah. God, I love their fight at the beginning there. Where they talk, and because the reason that the main like family, the mother husband and wife have that huge fight.
For people who haven't watched, they're planning to get a divorce. This is their last trip
and
with their kids. She has a medical condition of some sort, which turns out to be a benign tumor. Grows.
Well, it's not. It's I guess it's benign. Yeah, I guess it has to be. But like my favorite part about that is absolutely the way in which they tell us. Oh, also she had an affair. So like there's just too many things going on.
Right, and he finds out, and earlier in the movie he goes, "I want to sell you something."
Right.
Pauses, goes, "Never mind, I'll tell you later."
Yeah.
There's a lot of like sweaty ass planting.
Sweaty fucking
like
dialogue.
plants for payoffs.
Yeah, it's so obvious. Maybe it's not obvious to everyone, because, but it's just like, man, it really feels like things just happen without reasons.
Yeah. Again, people go around and like say practically to the camera what they do. Right. And it's like, I know all of these are going to come in.
They're going to come to play. And that's the funny part about the mother is he says, I forget, I can't remember if you said this, but like he says to her that the reason that she's living in the past is because she works at a museum.
Yes, he fights in the fight. Yeah,
yeah, and then she says
you're living in the future because he's like an insurance adjuster.
You can't
or whatever.
see me. It's just such a like. Okay, so like this is right up front. Don't know where this movie's going, and you're just telling me a metaphor, an obvious metaphor with whatever you want to say. Again. Yeah. 2 steps ahead does not make you really ahead. It actually is a failure of the whole benefit of being 1 step ahead of the audience. Like if you're too many steps, then we just see it. We just see, oh, you want to go there. Yeah. And that's
he's not working it out naturally. And I should note, by the way, now I'll get to that. But yeah, so it's just tons of exposition and like really sweaty. So by the time they get to the beach, it's like everybody knows what everybody is and what we're doing here. And then just shit, like, so her tumor accelerates because time, but again, not the fingernails or hair, whatever. And they cut the tumor out of her, and like seconds later, she's running around the beach like, oh, no, new thing, we're going over here. And that's kind of the problem with the movie, I thought, is that it's like that guy stabbing the guy, they don't take away his knife. It's this series of nonsense moments that feel disjointed and weird, right?
Do you want to spoil the end?
Okay.
Because I feel like we can just get to the end. Just assume mostly everyone gets old, except the last two.
Except the last two, they still get old, but they're the youngest.
The sister and the brother. Yeah, the next to youngest.
Everybody else dies. Yeah. And at that point, I was like, are we just watching people slowly die? And that's mostly what this movie is.
Gonna go, yeah.
Yeah, and that is such a bummer for a movie.
It would have been such a bummer.
Nothing really happens. The movie is a series of them going, let's try to get off this beach, and passing out, and then aging.
And then slowly coming to terms with that, either killing themselves or in attempting more drastic measures, doing more dangerous things like swimming out into the water.
Yes.
Or climbing the rocks that surround this specific beach, which are clearly like meant to be like, we don't learn about what it is if it's like a meteor or something, but some combinations. At one point someone reads through all of the shit that's left on the beach, because obviously whoever's doing this is not coming back, or it's revealed when we tell you that they aren't coming back to the beach. No, the beach is basically toxic. So there's a bunch of remnants of the existence of previous tenants. And so when they find a notebook and one person like over the top explains it like they know, it's like,
there's a lot of scenes where someone's like, I think it's the rocks.
I think it's the rocks, but he also goes on, also the magnetic pull of the earth is probably happening. I wonder if there's other places on the earth that this is. And it's just like, fucking hell, dude. I don't care. I don't care.
Here's the thing, and this is leading up to the reveal. But the movie, this whole time, has been asking, what is this beach? Again, there's like sweaty exposition where someone's like, I think if we leave out the exit too quick, it traps us, and we get, because of the magnetic whatever. No one attempts to leave slowly, even though one of them says we could try that. We
could try to do that. Because they say, like, if
they
you
say it's the rocks.
I love the dismissal of the if we try to leave slowly, because what they're saying is that if they can't cross a certain threshold, because they'll have the equivalent of the bends. Which is why they're walking backward. It's because they're out of their mind and they're retreating to a place that feels normal. Because if they try to get back into our normal time stream, it screws them up. So someone makes a good offer of just how you do how you actually solve the bends. Go up a little bit, get acclimated, go up a little bit. They're like, let's do that. And they're like, that will take like 20 years of your life from you. It's like, well, not really. We're talking about like 5 minutes is 12 months. You can get slowly acclimated.
Right. Also, like what other choice do they have? like 20 years of their old life, like the
Of their
rapid
old life.
aging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, you're just sitting on this beach right now, so do it.
You're making
anyway?
a sandcastle
Like-
for 10 minutes. You could do
Yeah.
that for 10 minutes and probably get through it.
Yeah, but they hand wave that away. There's so many. So most of the movie is that it's people trying to get out, and then people aging, and people going, "You're aging," and it's like, "Oh, you got wrinkles. Oh, you're losing your eyesight." At one point, they have some real fast sex.
Off
The
screen.
two kids off screen who are now in their 20s. She gets pregnant. We
It's
alluded
the best
to that.
part of old, though.
The baby dies immediately after getting
Immediately,
born.
during labor,
and they say, like, I looked away for 1 second and it died because no one was watching it. And they say, I wrote the line down, things are moving too fast for a baby to survive. And I don't know what the fuck that means.
They also said a line of it died. This is paraphrased because I didn't write it down, but it died of not like enough tension, which I know is a thing for babies, but also not based off the rules of the universe that you set up.
That's what I was about to say.
Biologically, everyone's fine, so why would a baby not be fine?
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. Is it's like, wait, did the baby starve to death rapidly or dehydrate? Because no one else is having that problem.
No, it's made of pasta because she ate all the pasta real quick after she got pregnant because her body needed like new cram yourself with food, so I'll like process it real quick.
Yeah. So there's a lot of hand waving, and then of course the doctor, who no one thinks to restrain, they spend a lot of time dealing with him, even though he's just like cutting at them. Like I said, they tell the kids to like run away instead of helping because the kids are 30, and like he's just slashing. It's just 3 old people and one of them slashing 2 of them with a knife, and they're like, stop it. But since they heal really quickly, because that's one of the rules of this, they can't restrain him. They don't have the able-bodied adults help. They tell him to run away, and we're just watching this happen, and I'm like, can anybody get involved? Finally, she gives the guy super tetanus. We never mentioned that M. Night Shyamalan is the guy who brings them to the beach and is watching them, which is perfect.
That is my favorite.
so-
it's like he's the director, so it's like super funny that he's at the
perfect.
end of this like camera and he's like looking in, he's like checking out the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Checking out the movie he created that he made happen.
It's like, yeah.
So it finally amounts to, the parents die, the 2 siblings
The
are on the
big
beach,
reveal.
and the fucking brother says, by the way, that kid we met, who is like the son of the guy who worked there, he gave me a code that I never decoded.
The laziest shit I've ever seen.
It's so lazy because they've been on this beach for a day. You'd think he'd decode it just out of boredom, or because he realized that kid might know something because that kid is the son of the guy running the place.
Yeah. I think the idea is that so much was happening. The idea is that even though they're at that point, they've been there for like, what, they've been there for like 12 hours, or they say I think we got about 13 hours left before we're dead. And I think what they're saying, and at the end of the movie, he says he's about 50 years older, which makes sense because they're escorted. They get out and it's like daytime. So my guess is at that point, he is basically like 40 or almost 40.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So the message says, my dad hates the coral. So they learn that if you swim under the coral, you can get out of this beach. So that's what we learned. So at this point, we're all as an audience wondering, what is this beach? And I can't stress that enough, that the movie has been like, what is this beach? And I can't stress enough that we know why they got here. Because that they're clearly evil people at the resort, right? Like, would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I mean, the first line that they say when the family arrives at the resort is "Welcome to our version of paradise," like
Right.
which is another way of saying like our version of paradise is different from your version of paradise. They're like you said, they did enough to make it cryptic and like something's going on, but I don't know.
I guess my point
finish
is
your point.
My point is that at this point in the movie, would you say you care more about what is this beach than who put them there? Like I didn't care why it was happening. I still wanted to know what is happening.
Yes,
and the
I would
movie-
say more or less. Well, I didn't care about either. Is my point.
Yes. But you know what I mean is the characters kept being like, what is this beach? I think it's this. I think it might be this.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, I was like, what is the beach? What is the thing? Is it alive? Is it haunted? What is the reason behind this beach?
Mm-hmm.
The movie I'm leading to this is the fact the movie doesn't answer that question. They never explain what the beach is. They think we really want to know how the resort works.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is very dumb. Mm-hmm. So I guess we're getting to the reveal, right?
Yeah, I want just have the baby, man.
All right. So this resort found the beach, the magic beach. We don't know what it's doing, but they decided,
Or why it's there.
why it's there.
Or how
They
it
decided
works.
to invite people. Yes, the stuff that we would want to know in this movie. We don't know any
Sure.
of that.
Sure.
The beach is just magic, or that we don't know. They have decided to take people with diseases and bring them to the beach so that they can faster test pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
That's it.
At one point in a speech that they're like, let's have a moment of silence for, the group 73 or whatever it is, which means that they've done 72 of these.
Right.
He says like a moment of silence because they have some kind of conscience, but not enough. And then he says, one of our people who had a blood clot, they had seizures. Like, so we gave them a cocktail at the beginning that essentially was our new drug that we wanted to, push for seizures, for, epilepsy. And they're like 16 years passed before they had another fit. And it was like, oh, so we're going to go send that off to the people and save hundreds of thousands of lives.
Yeah. So,
Big
things.
Pharma. It's a big pharma
it's-
enemy.
It's big pharma. So this happens because M. Night Shyamalan, who does a terrible job at what he's supposed to do, he's just watching to make sure they all die. Mm-hmm. They go under the coral, and he reports like, well, they didn't come back up, so they must have drowned. He doesn't check like the other end of the coral where they would come out, because that's where they come out.
It's because they could breathe. They got another breath.
Yeah, they got another breath.
But
because the coral like weirdly cracked. I didn't understand why that happened.
I don't understand why that happened either. Because at one point, the sister gets her shirt caught on one of the coral, and even though it is like the easiest to rip shirt of all time,
she has a lot of trouble with it.
They cannot get it. Just looking at the fabric, you can see through it. Anyone can rip that. But apparently 2 grown adults can't. And then the rock face gives way, and that allows them easier to rip the coral apart.
But it magically splits, and the movie makes a note of it. To which I thought, oh, we are going to find out what the beach is. It's sentient.
I thought something was gonna. Yeah, I thought there was gonna be some magic sauce there, but no.
Yep.
I think
No.
also for your case, M. Night says, the actor at this point, or the character at this point, says at one point when he's on the phone with his higher ups, he's like, yeah, it's we only had one last year that got away, but they didn't even survive. So he knows that you can get through the coral. Like there's this coral passageway that just like I think the analogy is made earlier, where it's just like an X-ray vest that you wear at the dentist when they're taking X-rays, like the lead
it's like
vest.
a tube you can go through.
It's like a tube they go through that'll gets them through this problem of the bends. And they have in the middle of it, there's a little face hole where you can get some breath of fresh air. And you go, and so that's M. Night Shyamalan, the director, telling you, okay, so that's why maybe M. Night Shyamalan, the actor or character, is not assuming that they're alive, because he just wouldn't assume they would be able to resurface as much as they could. But if that's true, then no one could make it through. And he's already just cited with another line that others have made it through. They just died afterwards, while swimming.
Yeah, so he should have checked.
So it creates two new problems. It means that he doesn't know. It means that the character, M. Night Shyamalan, the character, the bad guy, doesn't know that you can get through the coral, or we have a bigger problem, which is people die when they're out there, but yet the children / now adults make it. So it's like you can't have both. And also, if you throw both at us, neither solve the problem. What am I'm going crazy.
It's all nonsense.
Here. Yeah.
It all feels like plot maintenance, because again, she's stuck, and they have this moment of tension, and the moment of tension is to create a situation where M. Night walks away.
Yeah.
But then the coral magically cracks open, and that just leaves more questions that I thought the movie was going to answer.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a big deal.
On top of all this, we're glossing over the fact that a pharmaceutical company has apparently thought that this is how they should test things.
This is what we should do with this anomaly.
Yeah. Number one, just put apes on the beach.
Yeah.
Give apes diseases. But number two, I don't think this is how pharmaceutical research needs to work. There's no reason to do this. People buy medicine no matter what. It's actually kind of a problem with the pharmaceutical companies that they can just charge whatever. So the idea that they're putting people on this beach so that they can monitor the long-term effects of a medication to, I guess, put it out quicker. But we put out medications all the time without necessarily knowing long-term effects.
But the idea being that we, it might have, a negative effect that we wouldn't know, so there's a lot of drugs that they can't do until they've done testing, and the testing need 10 years or something. They're we have the cure for this thing, but it also has shown that it will fuck you up. What is the long-standing repercussions of that? Well, let's put it into trial for a small group of people for 10 years. And then we can put it on the market. There are drugs like that. It's just insane.
But also, that's about side effects, right? It's not about whether or not it works.
I think that's what this is about,
because this woman's epilepsy, they're we prevented it for 16 years. And we're and it's you would know if you're preventing it if it just works, right?
Right, but
yeah. I think how science works is there's you look under a microscope and you can figure it out.
Well, that's in the immediate. I think that the reason that it was included, that he says for 16 years and emphasizes that number, is that it's oh yeah, we have this drug that works for every year, you just have to, and it means your life is constantly taking this drug or something like that. But if you have one cocktail that can cure you for 16 years, it's fine. There's a middle space here. You've already done the science,
but we don't
to figure this out.
Do we know though? Because the problem is we don't know how things age. Yeah, we know that a baby for some reason dies. We know that hair and nails.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't work because they don't know how the magic works.
Yeah.
So it could the chemicals could be in their body still for the equivalent of a day.
It's so bizarre.
It's of all the ways to test pharmaceuticals, it's the dumbest.
It's the dumbest.
And on top of all of this, it's not the thing we needed answered. I can't stress this enough. It could have been a cult. They could have been gaining the youth off of them. There could have been a million reasons why they're doing this to the people.
Right.
I don't care. What I was more concerned about is why does it happen? Why does the beach do this? And they don't answer that.
Well, to me, it's I understand what you're saying, and I understand that the movie sets it up to make you want that answer more, because it's more of the movie is them trying to figure out what's happening. So an answer to that question is more satisfying. But it all falls apart anyway. I have no interest in understanding either of those things, only because the way in which it, I think it could have been a very cool movie if we got and I could get no answer to either of those questions. I could see that.
Well,
the problem is that
they did good with the characters. If they did something
if the
good
characters
there.
were good, and we didn't have the problem once again that I think M. Night Shyamalan has just been beaten down over time with, which is that you need to follow a logic of some kind a little bit through the movie. And what I mean by that is people need to be in your movie asking the same questions as the person who's in the movie.
Right.
Or as the same questions as the audience. And
Right.
that
makes more
would
sense.
mean that we would therefore want to answer those questions. The problem is that if you look back at like the better M. Night Shyamalan movies, you know, Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, you know, even Signs, even The Village, I actually think that's underrated.
It has its moments.
Those movies don't get forced questions upon you. They don't have people in the movie asking questions about what is like the mechanics of this weirdness.
Right.
They just go,
Or
it's that thing and I don't like it, or it's this thing and I'm just going to avoid it, or I'm going to go toward it. Like that's all we needed, because that's how people work. People are just machines that operate based off their own kind of interests. If you make it clear what those interests are and those wants and those needs are, and it's like, I need to help my brother. I need to go over there. I have to break through this wall that's, you know, like keeping me from them. That's clearer than something like, well, why are we getting old? Well, it's because you asked so many people asked that question before. So now your audience wants that answer. This is the problem.
Also, the journey, because I think of a movie like Cube, which is a successful movie. I'm sure there's varying opinions on it. But they ask constantly, who is putting us in this fucking cube? We don't need to know how the cube works because it's pretty clear how the cube works.
Right.
It's a cube full of booby traps. So the movie focuses on why are we in this cube? Who put us in there? And it doesn't answer that question because it's designed not to. Because it's about the characters in the cube and what the cube does to them.
Right.
A guy who begins as a cop turns into a monster through the idea of law and order. He does everything justifying it with law and order. It almost answers itself, where you're like, well, clearly it's to experiment on them because we're learning things about them.
That's what
the point
this should have
being
been.
that it ends ambiguously in a way that's frustrating, but you understand it. This, like, had it not explained anything, I think it still would have been frustrating because the journey sucked.
The journey sucked, and that's absolutely a way in which to make this movie. It's a better way to make this movie. If for some reason you absolutely need to make a movie about a beach that makes people get old,
you make sure that
do
scene, you get
Hell is Other People, a SART play type thing, where it's like you were saying, like The Cell, where you're more involved with the emotions and the, you know, directions the characters want to take the story, as opposed to just what the fuck is this island? Because if you keep asking that question, now we're just lost. Like not like Lost is like a concept. Lost is in like we're literally the TV show Lost, where it's like the only thing bringing me back is just to understand. Like, just tell me what it is. Why is the polar bear?
Exactly. Just start the movie with them going to the beach in the van, getting dropped off, and then experiencing the movie, and then at the end they get out or whatever, and just do like a pullout showing something very cryptic about the island. You know what I mean? Like, do a quick pullout and show like there's a temple nearby, like an old ancient temple. Movie ends.
Yeah, a great,
you know?
Great way. A great way. Equally, you know what? A movie that's kind of beloved is A Cabin in the Woods, right? And that movie, the whole time you're asking the question, who the fuck is making these things? We see that there's people operating these things, but like, why is it? Why is it? And you keep wondering why. And you have like Sigourney Weaver there, I believe, and she's like the cryptic one who gives you no answers until the end, where it's like the ancients, right? Spoilers for shit. I spoiled Cabin in the Woods, but I guess it's 2012, right? But the idea being that we don't need to understand or even see the ancient ones. We just hear them off screen because we know that like the end is nigh. And that's perfect because the end can be nigh because nothing matters because it's all fiction anyway. But like, yeah, I absolutely would have been satisfied with an old movie that had better dialogue, better character work, different ambitions, different characters that like cared more about each other. As opposed to all the legwork that he did to do all the stuff of like, oh, this person has blood clots or this person has epilepsy. Like, if you're doing this kind of work where you're mining, like, okay, there's a commonality between them. Now you're just focusing my lens as the viewer into one question. And when you don't answer that question, it's called a bad movie.
Right. That's the thing, is most of this film, like 80% of this film, feels like it's spent having to justify its existence.
Right.
Having characters say, hey, why is it like this but not like this? When the characters don't fucking know anything, so they don't, like, having to justify how they got there and this weird pharmaceutical company, it bogs it down. There's a part where one of the characters walks up to the guy running it and he's like, hey, sir, don't you think it's weird that we mix people with diseases with people with like mental illness? Because that guy killed the blood clot guy. And he's like, file a complaint. And it's clearly the movie pointing out like, hey, this is dumb, right? That we did this?
Yeah, it also shows that there's a corporation that doesn't. So now I'm thinking, who's worried about the bottom line at this point? There's other people, which I guess is fine because you can just hide it behind the crypticness of like money over everything. So there's some kingpin in their suit who's just in a room somewhere who's actually doing all this stuff. Doesn't matter, because at some point you stop caring. Like,
they built such like a complex, weird, a sandcastle, and it falls apart because they keep trying to stick all this shit onto it to explain it. And it's like, tell a very simple story instead. And then they do the thing at the end, which we haven't even gotten to. So the kids get out. We learn it's a pharmaceutical company. They go to that cop because the guy told people he was a cop at the beginning. So we know. They give him like the book that they found on the beach, and they all get arrested. And the last scene is them flying in a helicopter over the beach, which I thought, like, don't do that. Don't go near the beach. Like, why would you even entertain that idea?
Right. Like, you still don't know how this shit works, really.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of get it.
And it's the cop and the two kids who are now adults. I don't know why they're doing this helicopter ride.
Right.
They're just like looking at the beach, and he says something like, so did you talk to your aunt? And he's like, yeah. She was kind of surprised that her nephew is 50 years old, but we have a place to go. And the movie ends on that. Like, once again, like, they
totally deals with it
know
like a champ. He's like,
why
I grew 48 years and I'm fine about it. I've become wise. I was 6. Today I'm 55-ish,
right.
Maybe 50.
But instead of focusing on what the character feels, he focused on the logistics of his family life. Of like, do you have a place to stay? And it was like, again, the wrong question is getting answered. No one gives a shit what he was gonna, like, oh, you didn't watch him age and go, man, it's gonna be hard if he gets out because he won't have an apartment. You know what I mean? Like, it's all the wrong questions that he keeps answering.
Another thing that I started thinking about, because he put it in the movie to make you think about it twice, which is the animal problem, much like the fingernails and hair problem that they solve. Right. They say at one point, the little boy, when he's a little boy, Trent, says there's no fish. Huh. And then when they get out and he's now an old boy, with his sister, who's an old girl, they're surrounded around fish. And I wanted to ask a question about that, because the answer, much in the same way that The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, should definitely end with a big giant baby dying. In the same way, fish should have no problem getting into the island. There should just be a lot of dead decomposing fish all the time, because it's not like they're being blocked from getting in there. That's not how fish works.
Right. If they'd go in, they'd age, and some of them would leave, and some of them would die.
Just like how they got the people to go through. Now, if there was some kind of portal, let's say, where M. Night Shyamalan at the beginning of the movie drives them up to like the beginning of the trail that leads to the beach and hands them a bunch of food and picnic supplies and says, just call me when you guys are done, or at 5 p.m. I'll be back. And they're like, hey, why don't you come with us? And he goes, I got to pick some people up. It's just like 10 minutes down the road. I think he says like 15 minutes. Just keep walking towards it, you'll find the beach. So he's clear. And at this point, we don't know that he's like the guy. He could be a cog in the system. We don't know. But we learn that he is actually like a, very important mechanical part of this project. Now, during that walk and in that sequence, it's like la-di-da, oh, look how cool. There's a little cave entrance that is like, or it's not a cave, but this like canyon-esque area that like you walk through for a little bit and then you get to the beach. No one had a problem getting into the time desync, but they had problems getting out, and that was one of the major points of the movie that they hit time and time again. That is the obvious way to get out. Let's try 7 different tactics in trying to get out this way. We can't. So it's kind of like they slip in like I don't know, like certain types of traps in which you use to catch fish. A little box that closes that they can easily get in, but can't get out. That's what this little island should be. And if there's most of it is ocean, there should be fish everywhere. There should be sharks. There should be a bunch of shit. And it's just like,
shit that can't get out.
So many times they point at the question, but then they only answer the times that they're like, they think you think it might be a problem. Like the writer. It's like I'm going to solve that one and that one, that one with obvious solutions that are clearly just written like just to solve it, like the fingernails hair problem, and then other problems I'm just gonna avoid entirely. And it's like, well, then stop spending all the time answering those things. What are you doing here?
It's like telling a good lie. Like a good twist is like telling a good lie, rather, which is that like the audience shouldn't know it's coming. First of all, for a twist,
right?
And a lot of what happens. And this isn't necessarily about the twist, but like a good lie you don't over-explain, right?
Well, a good lie,
keep trying, like by explaining a lot, they keep drawing our focus to questions and taking us out of the movie. And those questions, and then when they put us in that situation, we start asking other questions, and those questions don't get answered. When I walked out of this film. So this was a theater. I was in a full theater filled with just everyday people. So obviously, I hated all of them because that's what you do in a theater. You hate everybody you're seeing the movie with. And we all walked out united.
Yeah.
Because when we walked out, I heard an entire crowd of people murmuring everything we said during this podcast.
Yeah.
I heard someone be like, why didn't they take the knife away from him? Like, people were literally walking by just murmuring plot holes at each other.
Yeah.
Because that's what the movie invited, which was like, we're going to show this complex system.
And that was the problem with The Happening as well. I mean...
Oh, God.
Other than, in The Happening,
that's just
a dumb premise, but is it really that much dumber than A Beach That Makes You Old? I don't think so.
I actually like I kind of like the idea of that happening.
I kind of like the idea of like, it shouldn't be like plants that like know, but it should definitely be like a idea that like in the DNA of like some plants and animals, maybe not DNA, but like there's a way in which the world nature fights back when it gets pushed against a wall that, it's kind of how like ice ages happen. It's like, well, once you get over that threshold, then it starts a feedback loop that now we're in this segment of the reality of the Earth. That could have been
like
cool.
The stupidity of it. There's one thing I will say about M. Night Shyamalan, by the way, because The Happening reminded me, when he wants to do a joke, he's actually rather good at jokes. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, of course.
Like in The Happening, Mark Wahlberg apologizes to a plant and then realizes it's plastic.
It's very Spielbergian, in fact. Like he is his approach is very like he knows not only that, but when to deploy a joke.
It's Spielbergian, but it's very Gen X too. Like the fact that the rapper character is named Mid-Size Sudan
is a good joke,
and they just play it completely straight.
That's fucking great.
And it's like that's funny, yeah. He has a good sense of humor, but for the most part, again, the movies, it
gets old.
Gets old.
It really does. It's
Jesus.
So I guess, like, what are the lessons that we learn from old?
Okay. I think this is a problem. All right. I guess first question. I'm kind of figuring out the answer right now.
Right.
Is this the usual problems with M. Night Shyamalan?
I think it's a recent problem, yes. And I think at this point, I can call it endemic to his career.
Yes.
If we look at M. Night Shyamalan's filmography.
I think it really identifies it more than other movies. Like, it's never been more clear in my head that one of his biggest problems is that he feels the need to take these wild concepts and then try to explain them, but doesn't answer the right questions. It's very much the fact that, like, you either explain it all or you don't. The Happening is another one, where, as we said, like, someone's like, the trees are angry, and then we go with that, and then they base all their assumptions and logic off of that, even though it hasn't been proven in the movie. He loves having people who don't know what's going on say, this is what's going on, I think, and then them being just randomly correct. Or rather, it doesn't, or rather they go by those rules and they continue. And then he spends so much time worrying about things that the audience wouldn't care about.
Right.
It reminds me of, in Man of Steel, David S. Goyer added Superman's ship in ice.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in an interview, he was like, I wanted to fill in that plot hole. It's always bothered me. I always wondered, how did Superman's father know about Earth?
Mm-hmm.
So I filled the plot hole by putting this spaceship that is clearly an expedition spaceship crash landed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it's like, well, first of all, telescopes, like, just a telescope. Right. Second, by adding this plot device to fill in this plot hole that you imagined, you added more plot holes and questions, because that's what that does in that movie, to answer a question nobody asked. And that's what I feel like this is a lot
That's
of.
a lot
it's answering questions that no one asked.
It's focusing your attention to something that isn't the right thing. It's not the most obvious thing, nor is it seemingly more interesting. I think that's absolutely right. You nailed it on the head. I want to kind of go through, if people haven't recently done this, and actually look at, and think about the critical reception of his films through his career. So, like, the one that put him on his map was Sixth Sense, right? And then he goes Unbreakable Signs, The Village. All movies with huge, like, more or less everything. I don't know. Unbreakable is, I can't really argue this, but, like,
it's when he was
three
still
others.
hot.
Yeah, the three others were clearly a reaction to The Sixth Sense to me, or like the Signs in the Village and even The Happening, because what he's wanting to do is he wants to be successful, and he's reacting to the heightened success that seems to come along with his movies that specifically have a twist. Now, we talked about this earlier. I think that there's a big difference between a twist and a reveal, right? Because one is completely altering your expectation. It's where an expectation you didn't have is being completely ungrounded, and, like, you're immediately going like, oh, I didn't even think that was a thing. Like, I wasn't expecting that to be a question that was answered. And now that I think about it, it was absolutely what the whole movie was about, and I just didn't see it. We fell in love with that with Sixth Sense so much, and in Signs, he tried to do it with water, and in The Village, he tried to do it with the fact that the town is in the middle of its modern age. Right? Now, you look at his late career, basically when we enter his, like, when he really took a nosedive, I think, and then the later years, it's Lady in the Water.
Airbender.
Sure.
Oh,
Lady in the Water is 2006, 2008, The Happening, 2010, Last Airbender.
Lady in the Water was definitely the one that made everybody go, oh, he's out of ideas.
Yeah.
And then he did a few, like, commercial flops, and that's when people were like, oh, he can't even do like a regular.
I think that's in The Village and Lady in the Water is absolutely the thing that you just identified, which is his inability to answer the right questions or go for the right questions, but rather focus your eyes to another question that I don't care about. You know what his problem?
Yeah, you know what he kind of reminds me of? Have you ever read an article by someone who definitely reads the comments too much? Or a video where like a YouTuber or someone who's like constantly qualifying everything they say, being like, okay, now I know you're all going to say this about this, and oh, I know the haters are going to say this, where they've clearly spent too much time listening to what random people on the internet are saying about them.
Yeah.
That's how he feels to me, is someone who's like read every comment about his movies.
That's what I'm saying.
And obsesses with it.
A poor man. Poor man. We did this to him. We abused him. That's the realization that I think that I'm taking from Old.
Right.
And I think what he's saying with the Old is, like, honestly, I think it might actually be intentional, but I don't know. I don't know. But I think he's like, I'm looking back at my entire career and I'm realizing that I don't see what the point was. Like, I went into this thing and I got interested in this thing and I got interested in this thing and I got battered around by time. And the whole idea of the waves hitting, like, you know what the waves represent? Us, the audience. We can't get out. We forced him to a beach that he got old. That's what we did.
They do the one moment of the movie, even though it's not earned, that I felt like he was trying to get to, is when the husband and wife are senile. And they're on the beach, and he's like, I can't even remember why we fought.
Right.
And he's like, I don't remember why we left this beach. It's beautiful. Because they're truly in the moment.
I think that's his hope. Yeah.
Well, I think the movie is about, and this is true, this is something my dad always tells me because he's so fucking zen, is that, like, time is an illusion, and when we worry about time, again, the character who's stuck in the past, the insurance person, when we worry about time, we forget to actually, like, that's when we start falling apart. Is when we're worrying about our plans.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why these people are freaking out when they're like, time is accelerating. And so, because time is so precious to us, we think about time all the time. And so at one point, these two characters actually stop and are able to enjoy just sitting on a beach. Because the irony, of course, is they're in a paradise. They're on a beach, a place that you'd want to spend the rest of your life and die. And they get to do that. And so they have this beautiful moment where they actually enjoy where they are and what the moment is. But for the most part, it's also about, being battered by his fans.
I think it's a colloquial, or what do I want to say? There's a good way to say it. Okay. So another thing, alluding to something we talked about earlier, is that there's, like, always, with Shyamalan, there's always an intellectual, like, intrigue that goes along with every maneuver that he does, not just in camera or like the sound design and the mechanics of filmmaking, but the story itself. I think we'll find that almost every character, the way in which they died is fitting on some level to the way in which they lived. Or rather to say that there's some correlation. It's not causality necessarily, doesn't need to be, but there's a poetic kind of suggestion that happens within the way they die. Look at the way that the people die. There's the fact that like Mid-Sized Sedan is murdered by a man with mental illness plays to the idea not only of, like, stabbing because he has, like, blood clots and whatnot and something wrong with his blood, as he says, but rather that he's actually stabbed because the presumption of someone else. He was murdered in particular. He's one of the only ones murdered because they all blamed him, right? Because he was the outsider on the offset. Now, like, when we look at how the doctor died, he dies of rust poisoning, which is hilarious because it happens in 10 seconds. And I don't know if you've ever gotten tetanus from like a cut, which is all that's all that was necessary.
Super tetanus.
He gets
That's the
super
idea.
tetanus,
the tetanus
and dies.
is accelerated.
Right. So if going back to the old math, so that means let's say he dies in a minute. I haven't ever had tetanus, but in 12 days, is that what happens to you?
I think if you don't get a tetanus shot, it will fuck you up.
Yeah, it poisons your blood.
I have no idea how quick.
I don't know what he is though, because you see like his veins turn rotten, like he's necrotic all over. Anyway, everyone kind of dies with this kind of like the lady
who's obsessed with her looks dies
because her calcium deposits, and she dies in like a huddled bone mass because she can't. That's the part in the movie,
keeps
by the way.
breaking her arms, and they keep setting within seconds. Which I was like, that's a neat idea.
It is a neat idea.
I don't know why she's slamming against stuff. Like, I didn't know why she was doing it to herself.
She wants again, the same problem you pointed out. Why does she care so much about the light? I know intellectually why, because she doesn't want to be seen. But why would someone go to why would they go so far in order to, it's like, turn off the light, turn off the light.
They have a line at the beginning where she tells the girl not to hunch at the table, to show that she's clearly worried about looks.
And she asks for calcium because she has a disorder where, like her bone mass is all screwed up. I
Again,
guess. I don't know
it's a lot of people saying exposition for the first 30 minutes of this movie. But one being her saying, I have a calcium deficiency.
Yeah. And so because everyone is kind of this like thematically involved, like suggestion of their death or the way in which they die, the two parents who resign and say like, why would we ever want to leave this beach? They get the story, right? That's M. Night Shyamalan, or maybe the writer of Sandcastle's way of trying to suggest to us that you just kind of have to be along for the ride. And this was their ride. It went super fast and super sucks. But like, you just had to, like, growing old isn't bad. It's how you use the time, and they chose to be happy and come to peace with it. So they had kind of a peaceful end, you know?
Yeah.
That's the closest we get to it. I think that's M. Night Shyamalan choosing that moment, and he plays that moment kind of off screen, which is another thing that I think alludes to his like thematic vision, which is that like life's best moments happen off screen, so to speak. Like they aren't when you're not looking for something, you find it kind of stuff. And I think
the thing is that oh, sorry.
No. I'm just saying that those are all the themes that are involved. And when we get to, and if we try to start thinking about this movie specifically as kind of some form of narrative with M. Night Shyamalan reflecting on his own life and career, which I don't think you can ever not do with someone like Shyamalan, but like any artist really, because, you know, they're just a person and they want to talk about what they want to talk about. I super think that this movie is him griping about the way in which we forced his hand. And then before he knew it was over, because he was locked into this like tunnel, essentially, where he had to make these like types of movies in order to be successful, he doesn't feel like fulfilled.
Yeah.
I honestly think this, because if you start to itemize the things, they start adding up.
But the thing is that he can still he still has bad instincts.
You can go
like,
wherever
for
you
example,
want.
the meaning we're talking about could have been done in a 90-minute movie that didn't involve an evil pharmaceutical company.
It's so
like
weird.
that's the thing about M. Night Shyamalan is he has a good heart. He has terrible taste. Like that's what it is. He's a good artist with terrible taste.
That might be true. I think his knee-jerk reactions, I think, like The Happening or The Village, where like the reveal, or you know, in those two movies, the twist really is motivated by a need to be so elemental, fundamental, that something like time or water or something like that is the villain or is the thing that saves us. Like he wants to get in touch because he wants to be deep. So it's not that he has taste that isn't good, because he wouldn't think of stories Like, there's actually a story in the movie that he tells because someone's a sci-fi writer, which is yet again, like, you put yourself in the movie kind of stuff. She just reads like, it's so funny because it's like a comedian just like reading their Twitter, like their tweets, to like get a laugh at like because it's like him saying in his movies, like, check out this idea, a bunch of birds that like can scream and like knock people out, and it runs into like a plane, and it's just like, yeah,
I also thought that was going to come into it.
I think that's him just trying to say, like, by the way, I have other ideas. But like,
yeah, you're right.
I really think that what he's doing there is that it's not that he has bad taste. It's that he really wants it to be more than it should be. And it goes back to the problem again, is that we kept beating him down and telling him, this is what you are, make more of this. And when it wasn't exactly like we wanted it, and he wanted to get out of it, he was like, oh, now they hate me and I can't make movies anymore. I have to be one thing, which I only really made one movie like that I wanted to make that way. The only movie that he's ever made that needed needed a twist was Sixth Sense.
Yep.
None of the other movies did. Signs didn't.
And a lot
Village
of them
didn't
feel like they aren't written with a twist. The twist is added.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. Has he directed anything he hasn't written?
Yes. I believe so. Wait, hold on. I thought there's Wide Awake, which is like his early one, but he wrote that.
Yeah. M, if you're listening, Mr. M, fucking direct one of our scripts.
Direct someone's script.
Direct one. I know you're listening because you read all the comments. No, but like seriously, like I don't know. It's almost like a Stephen King type thing where like he writes these really like Stephen King is one of those authors that like when you adapt, you kind of have to, change some stuff because it would be dumb otherwise. Because he writes things that in a novel can be scary, but are still like conceptually kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And M. Night, I think, has that problem where he like overwrites, he overcorrects, he doesn't understand simplicity.
Exactly.
Like his
simplicity, it doesn't need to always be the biggest stakes. And I don't mean that of like, it doesn't need to be like, we often talk about stakes in terms of like the stakes of the movie, like in 2012 or like disaster movies. It's usually like the whole world will die. I don't mean stakes in that regard. I mean stakes in like, if the movie goes to its conclusion, what is the thematic weight of that movie? It's something that is so compelling, so fundamental that all humans can feel it. He's trying to make universal films. He wants to make universal films. And the problem is that he doesn't know how to do that. He just doesn't. Like, and I understand that it's one of the hardest things to do. It's like, hey, go write a thing that connects all humans together and is its own story, but is in a way all stories. Fuck me, dude. Like that, you get that once a generation.
It's why I really enjoyed The Visit, despite what it's saying about mental health, because it's not saying good things about people with mental illness. It was a movie that it felt the most self-aware, where he's like, the whole movie you're like, what's the twist? What's the twist? Yeah. And the twist is, oh, they're just out of their minds. It is like, oh. Huh. Yeah. Like it's an anti-twist and it's almost on purpose. It felt that way. But the thing is, most of the movie is simple. The solution is simple. Right. Even The Sixth Sense. Oh, he's dead. It's actually rather simple. And that's one where if he didn't bother, they made it very clear, very simple. I see dead people. They don't know they're dead.
It's like if
you watch the whole movie and you can try to pick it apart, but ultimately you can say, it's dead people magic. It's fine. Right. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't lay out all these elaborate rules that become a problem. And then the more rules he laid down, the worse his movies get, I think.
I think it's because of his interest. If he just did something simple, something that's like an older form, like a Western or a Boy Meets Girl, or like even a horror movie that is just like a shark or something like Jaws, just something simple, you will get closer to where you want.
Yeah, he'd probably knock it out of the park. I don't think he understands also, because I think all scripts have meaning. You know, like when you're writing a script, it's about something often personal to the writer or political, but a lot of films mask it and don't make it obvious. And like, I don't think M. Night realizes that you can do that, where it's like you can make it about something without really, like, it almost like he starts with the like I also think you should never start that way with writing, but this is just personal, where it's like if you try to make it an allegory, you get bogged down with trying to do that. You know what I mean?
No, I think that's his actual problem. Like, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. I think he does too much of that. I think he's too formalist.
Yeah, he starts with, I want to make a movie about this, and then he tries to like dress it up with a, like, you kind of have to do both. You have to let the story go where it needs to go and find the theme and what you want to talk about as you're writing, I think. Like, I think it's okay to start
process, but yeah, I definitely write from theme, but you know, we all have it. I think the problem is how much time in the movie is spent doing these things.
I think he's too, I don't know. He's too bogged down with getting it exactly the theme he wants or something. Like, I'll start with a broad theme. You know, like I'll be like, oh, I want to make a movie about how capitalism is bad.
Yeah, I don't even think it's
and then you hone
problem.
it in and you figure out what you want to say. But I think he's like, he just gets really, like, he just starts in the wrong place.
I think it's just too much of it. I don't think that he's bad at identifying what his themes might be or what his dramatic argument is.
It's okay. This is what I think he's scared that people won't know what the theme was.
That might be true.
And so he injects it into every moment. Because this movie could have been 90 minutes, and it could have just been very simple, body horror, beach, getting old, and then at the end you have the one characters enjoy the moment, and then you walk away from it, and people can take what they want from it and be like, oh yeah, there was kind of a meaning there. You know what I mean? But instead, he spends so much fucking time.
I think in 1999. Sixth Sense came out, and everyone lost their shit because it is a solid movie. And the reason that they lost their shit is that because, like he did, like a great clockmaker, he did the thing where when you retroactively think about the movie, it's airtight. And the fact that a lot of those types of movies, like Usual Suspects and whatnot, like, you don't think about that, right? He took the wrong lesson from that. Yeah. He said, if I do interesting maneuvers with filmmaking in my movies that do that, people will also understand those suggestions. And that's not really true about movies. Stories are about people. Stories are about events. And it's usually people fighting the events that determine and dictate what our lives are going to be. Like, this is the basis of story, emotions.
Yeah, it's no different than Michael Bay starting with the idea for an action scene.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're starting from the plot device you want in your movie, as opposed to figuring out the story. Yeah. Where, you're right. It's like how there's trailers that'll, like, you ever see trailers for movies where they'll actually say, like, you won't believe the twist. And it's like, well, you just spoiled it. Like, the fact that there's a twist is a spoiler. And, like, a lot of people don't understand that sometimes, where it's like, if you say there's a twist, then you're watching the movie, and if you're smart enough, you can see the twist.
Right.
And M. Night, whether we started it or, you know, again, it's sort of like everybody kind of enabling each other with him. Now he's like, there's going to be a twist. And this felt like another one where, like, he couldn't explain what the beach was, but he was like, well, I have to have something. So he did this.
Yeah. And granted, all this, like, because I think you and I agree, but I'm coming from a place of, like, in an action movie, let's say, or, you know, like, I think it's more smarter of a decision and more helpful in your story if you do something like, let's say, in Die Hard, when, like, John McClane is walking across glass, like, that is has much more weight and is more interesting than, I don't know, something like in one of the new Jurassic Parks, a bigger dinosaur that's more scary.
Right.
You know, it's like, what are you going for? And I think he's going for the bigger dinosaur every time. And it's just like,
he's
man, you understood you made Sixth Sense. You showed us that you knew what was good about it. It was about both of them, like, once again, referring the thing that came out today on Director Piece, because I'm pulling a lot from what Adam kind of started with, which is Adam says it very well, and it's applicable to just M. Night Shyamalan's career as a whole. He was like, the problem is that, like, or like the beauty of Sixth Sense is that you think that it's one person's story. You think that it's like, oh, Bruce Willis is here to help Haley Joel, and it ends up being the reverse, because there's this beautiful duality about how do you move on, like how do you move on from the trauma of your past, and you think that is, and that's what a psychologist does, and so you think that this premise says that he's going to help by the end of the film Haley Joel, but the reverse happens. Why? Because he's dead. And it's just like, you understand why that's a good metaphor, and it's it does take a little thinking, but people get it, and they come from your movie going like, the emotions of that are so much more important. And like, again, Die Hard, the fact that he's like, oh, now he has to go through all this shit with all of his feet all fucked up, that has more weight in the narrative than a bigger dinosaur.
To quote the classic film Radio, we thought we were helping radio this whole time. It turned out radio was helping us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's, radio.
I mean,
I think that's
I know it's a joke, but I think you might actually find that's true. I don't know enough about the movie Radio to tell you that.
I've never seen Radio. Okay. I just saw the trailer. Okay. And that line is in the trailer. Radio is one of those movies that, like, the trailer looks like a parody, you know?
Yeah. I was hoping you're going to say, I don't even know if that's a line from Radio.
No, it's definitely in the trailer for Radio.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't need to bring up Radio.
I didn't need to bring up Die Hard, but like, I don't know. I just wanted people's to see the way I'm seeing it.
All right, when I compared him saying plot devices are like Michael Bay with explosions, that's actually not fair to Michael Bay, because Michael Bay, if he's making an action film,
he knows what he's going for.
You have explosions. It's more like someone saying, "I'm going to make a movie where it's all a dream at the end." And starting with that, like, it's a plot device,
right?
That he's starting with. I'm going to make a movie with a twist, and like, that's such a bad place to start,
right? I really,
or it's, I'm going to make a movie and then implant a twist in after the fact. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, it's so weird to me, because I walked in this movie and I knew what it was going to kind of be, right? I hadn't read anything really on it, but I had read that it wasn't doing well on, like, some people had told me it's not doing well in terms of reviews. And I was like, okay, this is going to be like run of the mill kind of like porn for trying to figure out what's the twist or what's happening. And I knew that that's what it was. It's what it was. It had some tricks that made me go, oh, that's kind of in it. M. Night Shyamalan, you still got some cool little maneuvers, but it all is sound and fury, signifying nothing, because I didn't care about the story, because you, like Dave said very well, focused on the wrong problems. But what I came out of this movie from that I didn't expect is I actually really do have a lot of sympathy for M. Night Shyamalan. Like, I hope he's okay about his career, and he's moved on in the way that the mother and father do in Old. Take a lesson from his own movie and just be like, hey, smile because it happened. Don't cry,
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's rich. He's made like 10 movies. And that's the thing, is
that's the truth.
He's accomplished way more. Like, when I